Okay, everyone. We're going to start back up. Ms. Hubner is going to be doing a presentation, and then we'll move on to some specific comments to the item from the fire chiefs. And then we'll do public comment following that, and then we'll have a further discussion working from there. Thank you, Ms. Hubner.
Good morning, Board. Denise Hubner, Assistant CEO. Today's presentation is a result of the direction given at the July 28th Board of Supervisors meeting. This will be a fairly lengthy presentation in which we will cover a lot of information, and my hope is that we can provide clarity to a lot of misinformation that we have heard circulating, move forward in a constructive manner, and ensure that we're being as transparent as possible with the information presented. We will be walking through several different topics. I'll begin with a broad county budget overview, followed by a closer look at the general fund and how discretionary dollars are allocated to support essential services. I will also summarize the major points from the recent revenue workshop to highlight the trends and pressures influencing our planning. From there, we'll review the general fund budget reductions and steps taken to reduce the deficit. We'll also cover the fire districts and their financial condition. And next, I'll outline the board's recommended budget revisions from the June 9th and 10th board meeting, showing how those adjustments fit into a broader fiscal strategy. Finally, we'll close with key facts to provide a clear understanding of where we stand in the path moving forward. I'd like to start with a brief look at the county's budget process, the forecasting methods we use, and a review of the overall budget. This will help frame the discussion and give context for the decisions we're evaluating. California counties develop their budgets in accordance with state law, primarily the County Budget Act. The County Budget Act allows counties to use either a 2- or a 3-step process. Calaveras County follows the 2-step process, meaning the board must approve the recommended budget by June 30th and then hold public hearings and adopt the budget each year by October 2nd. Once the board adopts the budget, that's what becomes the county's official budget of record. The recommended budget process starts right after mid-year is complete. The budget was published on the county website on May 21st. The budget was presented to the board on June 9th and 10th and was approved on June 23rd. The approved budget gives the county a working budget for July through September until public hearings on September 8th and formal adoption of the county budget scheduled for September 22nd. Every year, the county budget process follows the same timeline, with budget going to board for review the first meeting in June and approval the last meeting in June. The first meeting is always a regular agenda item, and the last meeting is consent, as it's just formal approval of the changes that were directed at the prior meeting. The same is true for the September meeting dates. Additionally, all meeting videos are posted online for review and future reference. Financial forecasting generally follows 2 approaches. A conservative approach estimates revenues low and expenditures high, reducing the risk of a shortfall, but making the budget harder to balance. An objective approach aligns estimates closely with actuals, which is easier to balance, but carries more risk if revenues fall short. The recommended budget uses the conservative approach, which the county has historically relied on to minimize the chance of a budget shortfall. We're facing several key budget pressures this year. Many revenue streams are remaining flat, while inflation is driving up the cost of goods, services, and construction costs. Utility costs and insurance premiums continue to rise. Our CalPERS unfunded liability adds ongoing pension pressure. Aging infrastructure adds further strain, and additionally, we have to stay prepared for unexpected events, emergencies, regulatory changes, or fiscal shifts that may arise throughout the year. As you can see, the county's total budget is currently running a $22.9 million deficit. Non-general fund operating units account for about $767,000, and the general fund is a $2.35 million deficit, but is also using $3.2 million in one-time funds to cover costs, with that included makes the general fund deficit sitting at $5.5 million. While these numbers may look smaller than in some prior years, they don't tell the full story because many operating accounts are relying heavily on one-time or restricted funding to maintain a balanced budget. And without that funding, they would have significant higher deficits. This fact is reflected in the $19.8 million deficit in our special revenue funds, which highlights the structural challenges we're facing countywide. I want to start budget review with a snapshot of the overall budget as a whole. Total revenues for fiscal year 26-27 are projected at approximately $281 million, a modest increase of $1.3 million compared to the prior year budget. While overall growth is small, several revenue categories show notable shifts. Intergovernmental revenues move in different directions, with state revenues increasing by 17.4 and general intergovernmental revenue declining by 19.2. This decrease isn't entirely a loss of funding. It's the result of a change in how these revenues are being recorded, primarily for the behavioral health building. Federal revenues also are declining by $5.2 million, reflecting reduced federal funding for the year. In contrast, miscellaneous revenues increased by $4.2 million, including $2.5 million in the Roads Department for Caltrans reimbursements. Operating transfers rise by $5.3 million, largely driven by transfer from special revenue funds to support ongoing operations. Other financing sources decreased by $3.2 million, primarily due to adjustments in internal cost recovery in the Health and Human Services Agency. And finally, taxes increased by approximately $1.14 million, contributing positively in a small amount to the overall revenue picture. Taken together, the fiscal year 26-27 revenue outlook appears to have slight growth. However, the increase is skewed because more funds are being brought in from special revenue funds to support ongoing operations, while the contingency balances in those funds are showing corresponding reductions. Although the county is projected to receive $281 million in total revenue, only roughly $44 million of that is truly discretionary. The remaining revenue is restricted, tied to specific departments and purposes, such as grants, reimbursements, program-specific funding, which means it can't be redirected for broader county needs. This distinction is extremely important because it shows how limited our flexible funding really is when we're trying to address countywide priorities and budget pressures. For fiscal year 26-27, total recommended expenditures are $405 million, representing a decrease of approximately $12.7 million compared to the prior year budget. This overall reduction is driven largely by decreases in one-time or variable cost categories. The most significant reduction occurs in capital assets, which is declining by $14.3 million, reflecting fewer planned one-time infrastructure projects. Appropriations for contingencies also decreased by $7.5 million, indicating a smaller reserve set aside for unforeseen needs, which highlights the use of reserve balances. Despite these reductions, several operational areas show growth. Operating transfers out increased by $5.3 million, which again reflects special revenue funds supporting ongoing program needs. Other charges went up by $5.3 million, mainly because of a change in how we process reimbursements, which is directly tied to the $3.8 million drop in intra-fund transfers.
Ms. Hubner,
Yeah.
if you could go back to that, because I think that's crucial in outlining the entire revenue versus capital assets being expenditure of one-time funds. A lot of these structural deficit is revenue that has come in for capital assets in the past, so we're not showing a revenue in this, and we're making the expenditures to do such things as the DA's building, the animal shelter, and other things right now, which is going towards.
Well, just for clarification, the district attorney building does not count against our general fund deficit, as it's held in a special revenue fund and funded with the prior year rollover, which would be considered one-time funds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that if you look at both sides of the categories as a debit as opposed to credit, we're showing part of this as one-time funds that come in the past, so we're not showing the revenue this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where it would show as a debit as opposed to a credit, or cost as opposed to a revenue.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's a point that everyone understands.
And that's why I go through kind of this lengthy explanation of why you see large shifts. It's not necessarily a large add to a revenue if it's subtracting from a different revenue source because it was just moved in a line item in a budget. It's not an actual true growth of revenue. And so,
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next, I'll give an overview of the county general fund, which contains the majority of the county's discretionary dollars. The largest sources of revenue are taxes budgeted at $34.6 million, which is an increase of $1.1 million. This category comprises the majority of the county's discretionary revenue. Transfers in totaling $19.1 million, which is $1.9 million higher than last year, again, highlighting the use of one-time or restricted funds. It's important to note that while total revenue appears to increase by $1.2 million in the general fund, that we have included $3.2 million in one-time funds used to close the budget gap. When those one-time transfers are removed, ongoing general fund revenue actually decreased compared to the prior year. Total general fund expenditures are budgeted at $81.7 million. The largest categories of general fund expenditures are salaries and benefits at $48.9 million, making up 57% of total expenditures. This reflects an increase of $2.3 million over the prior year budget, driven by salary progression, improved employee retention, and an increase in unfunded liability costs. Services and supplies is the other major category at $25.7 million. That makes up 30% of total expenditures, which is a decrease of $380,000 from the prior year, reflecting the budget reductions despite inflationary pressures. Here we have the estimated figures for the 1% property tax split for the upcoming budget year. This chart illustrates how each portion of property tax dollars distributed among local entities. As you can see, the largest share goes to the school districts, which receive 55% of property tax revenue. There is also 12% allocated to ERAF, which is additional funding that helps support education. You'll see that 6% of property taxes, or just over $7 million, goes directly to the fire districts. And what may be surprising to some is that only 17% of property taxes collected flow into the county's general fund. This is the portion that supports the wide range of county services our community relies on. Secured property taxes continue to be one of the county's more stable revenue sources, showing steady and consistent growth in recent years. For fiscal year 25-26, we received $18 million. For fiscal year 26-27, projections will be updated based on that prior year figure and once the fiscal year closes. I anticipate bringing a higher property tax projection to September budget hearings.
Can I say something here? What she has up there is correct. We're supposed to get 17% of the property taxes. But what happens when you write your check for your property taxes and you send it into our tax collector, all of that money, every bit of it goes to the state. We don't keep 17%, send the rest to the state. All of it goes to the state, and then the state gives us back, supposed to be 17%. But in prior years, we didn't get 17%. And then the state says, just deal with it. That's why we do our final budget later on in September after the state does their budget, because they can take some of that 17% to balance their budget. And back in the years 2021, 22, we had drastic reductions because of that. And I don't know what the state's going to do this year because they have some issues going forward with their budgets. But we won't know until they finalize theirs. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, next, I'd like to walk through the breakdown of the 8.25% Calaveras County sales tax and highlight how those dollars are distributed across state and local agencies. The single biggest share of sales tax collected in Calaveras County, 48%, goes to the state general fund. The county general fund and the incorporated city together receive 12% of overall collections. This is the portion that directly supports local services and operations. And the sheriff's and district attorney offices are budgeted to receive the 6% related to the Prop 172 allocation. That funding supports public safety operations and related services. Fire districts receive 12% of total collections. This comes from Measure A collections and is in addition to the property taxes shown on the last slide. Sales tax revenue tends to be more volatile than property tax revenue, and the trends we see usually reflect the overall health of the economy. For fiscal year 25-26, collections came in slightly over the 4.6 budgeted amount. Looking ahead to fiscal year 26-27, we're assuming a status quo level of revenue, as we expect sales tax to remain relatively flat as it has in recent years. We do not anticipate recommending an adjustment in sales tax at budget hearings. For fiscal year 25-26, excise tax collections were just under $3 million. For fiscal year 26-27, the recommended budget's at $2.85 million. Based on board direction from the excise tax item today and review of collections, we may be recommending a small increase at September budget hearings. Prop 172 is the statewide public safety sales tax approved by voters in 1993. It dedicates a half-cent sales tax to support local public safety functions. Because it's tied directly to sales tax activity, Prop 172 revenue for the county has remained essentially flat in recent years. As sales tax levels hold steady, so does the funding from Prop 172, which means it's not a growing revenue source we can rely on to offset rising costs. While Prop 172 requires that funds be used for public safety, it does not obligate the county to provide those funds to any specific entity. Many county divisions fall within the public safety category and are also eligible for this funding. Transient occupancy taxes are the taxes charged to travelers when they rent accommodations such as hotels or vacation homes. In Calaveras County, TOT revenues have remained relatively flat since 2021, averaging $2.7 million per year. For fiscal year 25-26, the county collected $2.74 million, marginally exceeding the budgeted amount of $2.65. The fiscal year 26-27 budgeted figure will likely be updated with September adjustments based on historical actuals. Measure G is the local tax measure that went to approve voters or was approved by voters and it's revenue deposited directly into the general fund for unrestricted use. This slide includes both the ballot question and the impartial analysis that were provided to voters, which clearly outline that Measure G funds are not earmarked for a specific purpose, but instead support the general fund broadly. While it remains a steady source of revenue, its growth is limited and it stays relatively flat year over year. While the sitting board at the time chose to dedicate a portion of Measure G revenue to fire, that was a board decision rather than an obligation. With all non-restricted funds countywide, the revenue is reallocated every year and is not guaranteed to any specific department, community organization, or vendor. Each year, all appropriations require board approval after taking many factors into consideration, including the county's fiscal health and requirements to maintain service levels. As we move into the discussion of general fund discretionary dollars, it's important to recognize just how limited this portion of our budget truly is. These are the funds that the board can broadly allocate, but they represent only a small fraction of the overall county budget. Most revenues the county receive are already tied to specific programs or mandated services, or restricted for a specific use, which leaves very little flexibility for addressing emergent needs, supporting departments under pressure, or responding to inflationary costs. In this section, we'll walk through what makes up our discretionary funding, how constrained it is, and why it continues to be one of the biggest hurdles in balancing the county budget. All discretionary revenue growth is shown here. The three sources of fully or mostly discretionary revenue are general revenues, which is the account where most taxes are deposited, Prop 172 public safety, and transient occupancy taxes. The average combined growth from fiscal year 22 through 25 is 4.82%, and that is with a high outlier in 2022 of 11.19%. Fiscal year 25 growth is currently sitting at only 1.74% growth, but the fiscal year 25-26 books are not closed until mid-August. This is a very small increase in revenue and is not sufficient to cover inflationary pressures or rising personnel and other fixed costs, such as insurance. All general fund revenue gets evaluated and revised based on how the prior year closes and other known factors. I do anticipate recommending a small adjustment to property taxes and a minor increase to TOT at budget hearings in September. So the projection for fiscal year 26 will likely go up based on prior year actuals. Additionally, the increase in property tax collections is a direct reflection of the hard work and coordinated efforts between the assessor's office, the auditor's office, and the tax controller's office to catch up and collect on the backlog in recent years, which further supports the board's rationale for unfreezing a appraiser position. Our general fund spending is driven primarily by two major categories. Salaries and benefits account for 57% of all general fund expenditures, and services and supplies at 30% of costs. Together, these two categories make up 87% of our total general fund spending. Over fiscal years 21 through 25, these two areas grew at an average combined rate of 6.44%. That growth is outpacing the rate at which our revenues are increasing, which is why balancing the budget continues to be such a challenge. Ultimately, our options come down to two paths. We either need to find ways to increase revenue or identify areas where we can reduce expenditures. The general fund's projected ending fund equity as of June 30th is just under $4.2 million. This estimate is based on a very conservative approach, and rollover balance generally comes in stronger than anticipated, but the final figure is unknown till after the fiscal year ends and the books close. However, rollover balance should be considered one-time funding, as it's often the result of vacancy savings or costs not realized in the fiscal year they were initially budgeted, not a true reduction of one-time costs. As currently budgeted, of the $4.2 million in rollover fund balance, $1.8 is rebudgeted into general fund contingencies, and $2.35 million is used to fund a portion of the general fund deficit. Currently, general fund contingencies are set at $1.8 million, which is the board policy level of 2% of the average general fund expenditures over the prior 3 years, and the general fund reserve is set at 8% of the prior 3 years general fund revenue. General fund contingencies account is held in our 1010 account, which is the general fund operating account, and general fund reserve is held in Fund 1011. Both contingencies and reserves will be updated in September after the books close, and a new reference year is available for calculation. Today, I want to take a few minutes to clarify the purpose of the County Capital Fund, how money moves in and out of it, and why it cannot simply be used to solve the general fund deficit. There's a common misconception that because this fund has a balance, we should avoid making reductions in the general fund. The reality is much more complicated, and understanding the structure of this fund helps explain why. The County Capital Fund is the budget unit that receives general fund discretionary rollover dollars at the end of each fiscal year. A few years ago, when departments' budgets were more inflated, we routinely had higher rollover amounts. That created a healthy fund balance. However, about 3 years ago, when the county made a concerted effort to reduce the structural deficit, budgets became more realistic. We didn't initially take true reductions, but we did remove excess budget capacity. The benefit was a more accurate financial picture. The trade-off is that rollover amounts are now smaller, which means the capital fund no longer grows the way it once did. As of the close of the current fiscal year, we estimate the county capital fund balance will be just under $15.7 million. Looking ahead to the next year, the only new deposit currently budgeted is $500,000 from Integrated Waste Management, which is the board-approved loan repayment for the Rock Creek Phase 3 project. Beyond that, there are no additional revenue sources planned for the upcoming year. If the general fund rollover ends up higher than expected, that could change during the September budget adjustments. But once again, if it is adjusted, those costs are one-time savings that should be used on one-time costs. Now let's talk about these funds, how these funds are used in county capital. County capital's dollars support several major categories. Board-approved capital infrastructure projects, such as the district attorney and the animal shelter. General fund capital assets, with the largest recurring cost being the sheriff's office vehicles and outfitting. Critical building maintenance and IT infrastructure projects, which keep county operations safe, functional, and secure. And a transfer to the general fund to support balancing. That's part of that 3.2 one-time funds that I discussed earlier. And a deposit to prepare for the additional payroll in fiscal year 27-28, estimated at $2.25 million. As you can see, this fund is not just used for constructing new buildings. It's the county's primary source for ongoing capital asset replacement and maintenance of existing facilities and technology. These two categories alone require $2 to $3 million every single year. At the current rate of deposits and spending, we estimate this fund can only sustain these obligations for an additional 2 to 3 more years. After that, if the fund is depleted, those same costs become a general fund obligation, which would add to the deficit that same $2 to $3 million every single year. Admin is often asked why we don't just simply pull all available dollars into the general fund to help cash flow operations. On the surface, that sounds like a simple solution. But using large amounts of one-time money to cover ongoing expenses is widely recognized as poor fiscal practice. Once the money is gone, the county faces an even larger correction because costs continue to rise over time. Additionally, there's another issue that would arise from that practice: deferred maintenance. When we postpone building repairs or delay replacing critical assets, the long-term cost to the county increases significantly. Small problems become big ones, which can become emergencies. For all those reasons, the county capital fund should not be viewed as a simple fix for the general fund deficit. It plays a crucial role in maintaining our infrastructure, our technology, our ability to operate safely and effectively, and protecting this fund ensures we avoid even greater financial challenges in the future. While the general fund reserve is the official place that the board's policy level reserves are held, and again, that's Fund 1011, there are also several other designated funds that contain discretionary dollars set aside for specific purposes. The table shown here summarizes all of those funds. The amounts reflected represent the balances after all budgeted expenditures have been taken into account. Below that, the second table shows committed funds. These dollars are not budgeted for use in the current year's budget, but they are already committed for specific purposes. To put this into perspective, our general fund expenditures total $79.9 million. With $13.36 million in available fund equity, that gives us an operating reserve of 16.72%. The Government Finance Officers Association, who is widely considered the gold standard for public sector financial management, recommends that agencies maintain a minimum reserve equal to 2 or 3 months of operating costs, which happens to also equal about 16.7%. Calaveras County is sitting right at that threshold for the general fund. That means even a slight shift in the wrong direction puts the county at risk. In addition, any non-general fund program lacking adequate reserves can quickly become a general fund liability. With $304 million in countywide expenditures, that is a significant concern, especially because in recent years we have seen several departments that should be fully fee-funded require general fund support. During the fiscal year 25-26 budget process, the Board of Supervisors directed administration to conduct a comprehensive review of all county operations, focusing on identifying general fund cost reduction opportunities and strategies to maximize revenue. To support that effort, a public board meeting was held on January 13th and 14th, structured as a 2-day revenue and strategic planning workshop. The meeting covered a wide range of topics, including an overview of countywide funds and trends, major revenue sources, updates on strategic planning, and a detailed look at department-specific revenue, fund types, and fund equity. The workshop made clear that the county had been operating with a general fund deficit and that just over half of the general fund revenue is discretionary, which limits the county's ability to respond to emerging needs. It also underscored that most special revenue funds come with highly restrictive uses, which significantly constrains how those dollars can be applied. At the same time, the review showed that some special revenue funds actually allow broader use than currently practiced, presenting opportunities to better align spending with eligible purposes. Board policy, consistent with GASB Statement Number 54, requires that the county apply expenditures to the most restrictive funds when allowable. The discussion also highlighted that special districts receive services from the general fund departments without reimbursing those costs, placing an additional financial pressure on the general fund and an estimated $1.3 million. For anyone seeking further detail, the full slide deck from the January 13th to 14th meeting is available online as part of that agenda packet. General fund budget reductions. When we received all general fund budget requests, the general fund was showing a $12.6 million structural deficit. After working closely with departments, holding services and supplies to status quo, and correcting some errors, the deficit was reduced to $8.7 million. Admin then identified just under 3.2 million in recommended reductions through vacancy savings, overtime and extra hire reductions, department closures and scale downs, expense reductions, position freezes, and layoffs. This brought the deficit to $5.5 million. To close the remaining gap, we recommended the use of one-time funds of just under 3.2 million, which further brought the current year deficit to 2.35. At the June 9th through 10th board meeting, the board directed changes. Those changes had no impact to the structural deficit as the expense and revenue changes offset one another, but the changes did reinstate some of the previous reductions, which I'll go through later in this presentation. I want to emphasize that using those one-time funds buys us time to look for long-term saving measures and potential revenue options, but it isn't a sustainable long-term solution, as once those funds are gone, the gap remains. These challenges won't be limited to this fiscal year, so we need to continue pursuing practical and creative strategies to reduce future budget shortfalls. With that being said, when looking at the big picture, we need to consider that 5.5 million is the actual deficit, because without the same one-time funds brought in this year, that is the starting place for next year's deficit prior to any cost inflation or salary growth that exceeds our revenue growth. The county's general fund supports a surprisingly wide variety of functions, many of which are not widely known or fully understood. While some services are more visible to the public, countless others operate behind the scenes to ensure the county can serve its residents effectively, from public safety to fiscal oversight, legal support, administration, and community services. The general fund touches nearly every part of county operations. Importantly, many departments that are not traditionally viewed as public safety still play an essential role when disasters occur. Some examples of this are information technology keeps communication systems functioning and restores critical networks after outages. Health and Human Services does sheltering operations. Public Works clears roads, manages traffic control, supports evacuation routes, and assists with infrastructure assessments. County Council provides legal guidance on emergency declarations, resource deployment. The Building Department does damage assessments. The Auditor Controller ensures disaster-related expenses are accurately tracked for potential reimbursement. All of these administrative departments also provide support for logistics, procurement, and public information. Every department plays a critical role, functioning like a cog in a much larger wheel. When one cog slows down or struggles or is missing entirely, the impact is felt across the entire organization. Our ability to deliver reliable, coordinated, and high-quality services, even during periods of crisis, depends on all departments working in harmony. Recognizing how broad these functions are and how interconnected they remain is essential to understanding the true value and complexity of the general fund. For the fiscal year 25-26 budget, so not the current year we're sitting in, the prior year, departments were held to a status quo level of funding, but because inflation increased costs, maintaining flat budgets meant departments experienced an effective reduction in their spending power. To close the overall gap and keep the budget balanced, admin then requested a 10% reduction to the net general fund draw across all general fund departments. That collective reduction amounted to $3.24 million. In addition to those departmental cuts, several countywide measures were put in place to help balance the budget. Capital asset purchases were deferred, maintenance projects were postponed, a hiring freeze was implemented, a retirement incentive was offered to help reduce ongoing personnel costs. All of these actions together allowed the county to bring the budget deficit lower for fiscal year 25-26. Moving into fiscal year 26-27 budget preparation, county departments were once again asked to hold the line at a strict status quo budget. With inflation continuing to rise, this was once again an effective budget cut. Keeping budgets flat meant admin went through each line item carefully and required reductions even in areas that might seem minor at first glance. These small incremental adjustments were necessary to preserve the status quo level and ensure we could maintain core services without expanding overall general fund costs. When all general fund department budgets were first submitted, as mentioned before, we were sitting at 12.6 deficit. Admin then identified 3.2 million in additional reductions, including vacancy savings, overtime and extra hire costs, department scale downs, expense reductions, position freezes, and layoffs, bringing the deficit to that $5.5 million. In total, bringing departments to status quo and the outlined reductions in the following pages reduced the deficit by just over $7 million. Because of ongoing fiscal constraints and the fact that personnel costs make up 57% of our operating budget, the fiscal year 26-27 budget includes several position changes designed to reduce the financial shortfall and slow the growth of staffing costs. As shown in the table, these adjustments include 10 position deletions, 1 change in FTE, 4 layoffs tied to additional position eliminations. While these reductions are necessary to stabilize the general fund, they do have real impacts on services. Fewer positions mean fewer staff available to support day-to-day operations, respond to public needs, and maintain service levels across departments. Even small reductions can create delays, limit program capacity, and strain remaining staff. This table provides a summary of the personnel impacts, and the full list of department reductions, including these changes, is shown on the following slides. The first 2 pages of reductions focus entirely on non-public safety departments. Taken together, these reductions total just under $1.38 million and impact a wide cross-section of county operations. The adjustments span over admin, facilities, information technology, human resources, disaster preparedness, Calaveras community media, the assessor, the auditor, county council, archives, clerk recorder, agriculture, animal services, the library, econ development, and planning. Across these departments, the reductions included position deletions, layoffs, freezes, restructuring, a variety of targeted expense cuts, and some budget units are completely zeroed out. Others lose extra hire resources, and several positions are eliminated or reduced. This page is a continuation of the non-public safety reductions and again demonstrate how broadly our fiscal constraints reach across the organization. Each of these changes carries a real effect on service delivery. Eliminating positions reduces capacity, restructuring department shift workload, and cutting extra hire or overtime reduces flexibility, especially during periods of peak demand or unexpected operational needs. The reductions shown here reflect additional general fund cuts within public safety departments, totaling just under $1.9 million. These impacts span code compliance, the district attorney's office, probation, and multiple divisions within the sheriff's office, including patrol, dispatch, the jail, the coroner, and marine safety. Many of these adjustments involved freezing critical positions, eliminated roles, reducing overtime, delaying vehicle replacements that support frontline work. In public safety, these kinds of reductions have direct and immediate consequences. Fewer investigators and prosecutors show slow case processing. Eliminating probation and administrative support reduces supervision capacity and delays court-related work. Vehicle cuts in the sheriff's office limit field mobility during emergencies, patrol response, and other operations. Reducing overtime and holding positions vacant also affects staffing levels needed to maintain safe jail operations, reliable dispatch coverage, and consistent patrol presence. Overall, these reductions illustrate the difficult balance between closing the general fund gap and maintaining essential public safety needs. They highlight that fiscal strain does not only affect internal operations, it reaches directly into the services residents depend on most. In total, the recommended general fund reductions amounted to approximately $3.27 million. This includes the cuts across both non-public safety and public safety departments, reflecting the broad reach of the county's fiscal challenges. Together, these reductions represent difficult but necessary steps to begin closing the structural deficit. However, they also come with significant service impacts, reducing staffing levels, slowing core operations, limiting program capacity, and constraining the ability of departments to respond to community needs.
Ms. Huebner,
Yeah,
this is for year 25-26?
this is 26-27.
26-27.
The current year.
This is 1 year reduction.
Yes,
This is on top of multiple year reductions prior.
10% in the prior year, yes.
All right, very good, thank you.
The scale of these reductions underscore the seriousness of the county's financial position and the importance of long-term strategies to stabilize the general fund moving forward. Moving on to the following section, we'll turn to an overview of the fire districts. We'll look at key facts about how these districts operate and then review their revenue and fund balances. Understanding the contrast between the county's strained fiscal position and the comparatively strong financial standing of many fire districts helps frame the broader discussion and highlights the rationale behind funding changes. There are two foundational points about the fire districts in Calaveras County. First, the 9 local fire districts are independent special districts, not county departments. Each district is governed with separate boards and responsible for managing its own operations and finances. Second, the fire districts draw revenue from a wide variety of sources. Their funding is supported not only by local property taxes and special district taxes, but also Measure A revenue, state firefighter reimbursement programs, emergency medical service fees, state and federal grants, equipment reimbursement programs, and mutual aid agreements. This diverse revenue structure contributes to the stronger financial position many districts are experiencing. Together, these points highlight why the financial condition of the fire districts must be evaluated separately from the counties. The 9 local fire districts operate as independent special districts with their own governing boards, revenue streams, and financial responsibilities, not under the county's authority at all. It's important to remember that Calaveras County has many other special districts such as lighting districts, community service districts, utility districts, cemetery districts that all operate also independently and do not receive any county funding at all. Understanding the independence and financial structure of these districts is essential for evaluating resource allocation and the rationale behind funding changes moving forward. I'd like to give a brief overview of how our fire districts operate and how their budgeting relates to the county. Again, fire districts are independent special districts, not county departments. This means they manage their own budgets, which are approved by their individual fire boards. The county does not direct their spending, cannot adjust their budgets line by line, and has no authority over their financial decisions. Historically, before Measure A, many fire districts were underfunded, and the county often provided discretionary support to fill that gap. County administration met with Chief Herzog and Chief Johnson on April 2nd, 2026 to discuss recommendations for TOT and Prop 172 funding. During that conversation, we shared that admin would follow the board-directed status quo funding levels identified at the mid-year budget meeting. It was further communicated that while this is the current recommendation, the board always retains the authority to make adjustments as it sees fit. Even though fire districts are independent districts, they still receive a wide range of county services at no cost. These include services from the auditor controller, assessor, treasurer tax collector, county council, administration, and information technology. Fire districts rely on the county for treasury service, accounting and property tax administration, collections, legal support, contract and MOU assistance, and IT support for the financial system. In addition, they receive equipment through OES managed grants. Overall, while the fire districts operate independently, the county continues to provide substantial administrative and operational support to help them serve their communities effectively. As mentioned previously, the fire districts receive revenue from many different sources, the largest sources being property taxes and Measure A funds. Looking at the revenue trends overall, fire district revenues have steadily increased from 21 through 25. After a slight decline around 2022, revenues rose sharply due to Measure A in 24 and continued upward into 25. Overall, this reflects a clear trend of expanding revenue across nearly all fire districts by the end of this time frame. The figures here show that fire district revenues have grown substantially over the 5-year period from 21 to 25, increasing by just under 59% overall. A major theme in the revenue trend is consistent year-over-year performance. A key takeaway is that fire districts have chronically underestimated the revenue, under budgeting by an average of 25.86% year after year. Actual revenues significantly exceeded what was budgeted, demonstrating a consistent pattern of revenue far exceeding budgeted projections. Here you can see a breakdown of the various revenue sources that flow to the fire districts. With the exception of Prop 172 and TOT allocations, every revenue line reflects district-controlled funding that the fire districts receive, manage, and spend. Overall, the information shows that fire districts benefit from multiple steady revenue sources that go into their coffers and support their operational independently of the county's budgeting authority. I also would like to note that Moke Hill Fire and West Point Fire did not include TOT revenue in their 26-27 budgets, and West Point Fire did not include Prop 172 revenue in their 26-27 budgets that the county could see. The fire districts have not only generated surpluses, they have done so consistently and at a significant scale. Most notably, in just the last 2 fiscal years, the districts collectively produced a surplus of just under $9 million. A substantial amount of money flowing directly into the district's coffers and far exceeding their stated budgeted expectations. This level of surplus makes it clear that the districts are regularly outperforming their own financial projections, ending each year in a much stronger financial position than what is communicated through their budgets. Overall, the data reflects a clear pattern of ongoing, measurable financial overperformance across all fire districts. Across the districts, fund balances have grown to a point where they now hold an exceptionally high financial cushion. In 2025, total fire district expenditures were $27.9 million, yet their combined fund balance equates to an astonishing 62% of operating reserve, a level of financial backing far beyond standard public sector norms. For context, the county's general fund operating reserve, when taking into account all discretionary accounts, not committed, currently committed, is 16.72%. And even that figure would be considerably lower if adjusted for the county's $304 million in total expenses that could become general fund obligations if external funding sources were lost. When compared side by side, the fire district's reserve position is not just stronger than the county's, it is significantly stronger. The comparison makes one point unmistakably clear. Fire districts are operating with a far higher level of financial security than the county itself. Measure A. This is the ballot question and how the impartial analysis that went out to voters, which clearly stated how Measure A funds would be allocated and used. All Measure A funds go directly to the fire district despite rumors suggesting otherwise. Every dollar generated by Measure A is allocated to the districts and not retained by the county. It's important to note that while Measure A does outline the percentage that has to be used on certain activities, Measure A funding is not restricted solely to new equipment or new staffing. Fire districts have used Measure A dollars to support existing staffing soon after the measure's inception, demonstrating long established knowledge of how these funds may be applied. Additionally, Measure A funds do not simply accumulate within individual districts indefinitely. Beyond the 10% carry forward reserve each district is permitted to maintain, all unused Measure A dollars are redistributed to all fire districts the following year. With this structure, it is theoretically possible and financially beneficial for fire districts with stronger reserves to choose not to spend their full Measure A allocation, resulting in those unused dollars being reallocated to other districts in subsequent years. This design further underscores that Measure A revenues always stay within the fire service system. Overall, the combined information reinforces a simple message. Measure A funds go entirely to fire districts, are not restricted to new service or equipment, and any unused dollars above the allowed 10% contingency amount are redistributed to benefit all the districts the following year. The county does not receive Measure A money. Each dollar is distributed to and controlled by the fire districts and their respective boards. Now that we've reviewed the county and the fire district's overall revenue picture and discussed the eligible uses of Prop 172, transient occupancy taxes, and Measure A, I'd like to provide an overview of the board-directed changes that were made during the June 9th through 10th budget meeting and formally approved on June 23rd. At the June 9th through 10th board meeting, the Board of Supervisors heard extensively from county departments about how the general fund reductions were impacting county services and public safety. In response to the stated impacts to county services, the board made several targeted reallocations to help restore critical operations. First, the board reallocated $529,000 in TOT funds and $300,000 in Prop 172 funds from the local fire districts. These changes were used to reverse a portion of the county departmental cuts and to fund the $367,000 for the CDF dispatch contract, which was previously paid for from other general fund dollars. The board also reduced the CVB's TOT allocation by $50,000, shifting that funding to the Chamber of Commerce. In addition, board members reallocated $52,000 from their own district allocations. These combined actions help restore several key reductions, including funding for a deputy district attorney position and district attorney other expenditures, funding for snow plowing for the road department, assessor's appraiser position, a sheriff services tech position, overtime funding for multiple sheriff divisions, and to cover a portion of archive staffing and department costs, and also to cover probation's pre-trial expenses. Finally, I'd like to note that the annual budget review meeting is held on regular agenda the first meeting in June, and the public hearing takes place on regular agenda the first meeting in September. This is the schedule every single year, and all meetings and videos are available online. What is displayed here is the prior year TOT allocation and the allocation for the new fiscal year. Fire districts are currently budgeted to receive just over $132,000, and the CDF dispatch contract is budgeted $367,000. This reflects the updated funding structure the board approved during their June budget actions. The argument has been made that the county is obligated to pay for the CDF dispatch contract from general fund dollars. My response to that is the county has budgeted to pay for the contract with TOT, which is general fund discretionary dollars. The CAL FIRE dispatch contract is an essential component of the county's fire and emergency response system, providing 24/7 emergency dispatch coverage, resource coordination, and incident support through CAL FIRE's Emergency Command Center. The importance of this contract is demonstrated by the number of personnel and resources assigned to major fire incidents. An example is the Gann Fire. CAL FIRE deployed thousands of personnel along with helicopters, engines, and dozers, reflecting the scale of coordinated response required for such events. These dispatch services facilitate rapid, large-scale mobilization of firefighting resources in a way that cannot be achieved locally. Without CAL FIRE's dispatch capabilities and the depth of resources they provide, there would be no realistic way for Calaveras or many other California counties to effectively respond to and suppress an incident of this magnitude. To disregard the fact that CAL FIRE is the primary coordinating responding fire entity in a large-scale wildfire events would be to overlook the objective reality of how these incidents are managed. Due to CAL FIRE's quick and wide-scale response to large incidents, local fire districts can not only assist on the large-scale events, but continue focusing on important local responsibilities, including their essential small-scale fire response, EMS services, and day-to-day community support. Moving on to Prop 172. Displayed here is the Prop 172 public safety allocation is approved by the board in June. The $300,000 that was previously distributed to the fire districts is now allocated to a county public safety department, the district attorney's office. This funding allows the district attorney to hire a much-needed deputy district attorney position that was previously unfunded due to budget reductions. The table here shows the budgeted 2026 revenue for each fire districts and the board approved reductions to TOT and Prop 172. It's important to underscore that these figures reflect budgeted revenue only. Because fire districts historically under budget their revenue by more than 25%, the actual impact of these reductions is significantly smaller once you compare them to the actual revenue districts ultimately receive. You'll notice that West Point Fire did not budget any TOT or Prop 172, and McCallamy Hill Fire did not budget TOT revenue. However, it appears they included a portion of TOT within their Prop 172 budget line, so that adjustment was accounted for to maintain accuracy. Overall, the table shows a total budgeted decrease of about $718,000, which equates to roughly 2.5% of budgeted revenue across all districts. And this is where the context is crucial. The actual impact is even lower when compared to the district's actual revenue performance. Finally, it's important to emphasize that this 2.5 reduction is in stark contrast to the 85% cut that has been rumored publicly. The figures on this slide show clearly that the rumored 85% cut is not based on actual budget actions or real financial impact, but is simply misinformation. Following board direction on June 23rd, 2026, county staff met on July 23rd, 2026 with Chief Johnson and Chief Wenhold. regarding the TOT and Prop 172 reduction. During the meeting, the chiefs provided a letter from the Calaveras Chiefs Association with a proposal that would set the fire district's Prop 172 allocation at 0 and TOT at 662,500. Additionally, they submitted a summary of impacts if their proposal was not accepted. Overall, the main theme in the impacts is that fire districts would be unable to expand further in the upcoming year. Most districts are pausing planned hires, delaying staffing increases, or postponing equipment purchases. In a few cases, districts are taking additional steps like selling equipment or suspending benefit plans. But the overarching theme is that districts are simply halting growth, not cutting core operations. This is in stark contrast to the pages of reductions and the millions in cuts that the county itself is absorbing. It was communicated to the fire chiefs that any requested changes would need to be brought forward at the September 8th budget hearing, as the entire board would need to discuss making any adjustments to the budget as approved in open session. This is the same information we would relay to any external entity that requested funds. During this meeting, I also suggested that fire districts with larger fund balance could draw less Measure A funds to help their fellow districts that have smaller fund balances. In addition to allowing Measure A money to roll over to districts that would benefit from additional funds, the fire districts could offset the 2.5% revenue reduction by approving budgets that include a more accurate revenue figure and rely on existing property taxes and Measure A revenues instead of under budgeting those and including revenue from the county. This approach would maintain all current service levels, though it may result in a very modest decrease in the year-over-year surplus amounts.
Denise.
Yeah.
This
My
last part's the
last section.
Yes, the
Yep.
conclusion. It's a summary of everything. I think it's best. You've given a lot of great information. I just want everyone to know this summarizes everything you
Yep.
said, and so
Wrapping up.
accentuated.
Because so much misinformation has been circulating, I think it's important to close by restating a few key facts. These are the major points I want to be absolutely clear about as we conclude this presentation. Fire districts are not county departments, but are independent districts with their own boards. However, fire districts receive services from many county departments at no cost. County admin did meet with Chief Johnson and Chief Herzog on April 2nd to the 2026 and communicated that TOT recommendation would be put forward as the status quo amount as directed by the board in February, but that the board had the ultimate authority to make revisions. Budget review is held every year on regular agenda the first meeting in June, and approval is on consent the last meeting in June. Budget hearings are always held every year on regular agenda the first meeting in September, and adoptions the last meeting in September. Fire department representatives have historically attended these meetings. All board meetings are also always posted online for viewing in person if attendance is not feasible. Measure A funding is not restricted to new staffing or equipment, and the measure did not include supplanting language. Unused funds are reallocated each year aside from small carryover. Fire districts with larger fund balances could draw down less Measure A to assist fire districts with smaller reserve balances. This idea was shared. The average decrease to fire district revenue is 2.5%, which does not compare to the extent of reductions the county general fund departments have taken, which last fiscal year alone was 10%. This year's $3.2 million in additional cutbacks were in addition to the prior year's across the board reductions. This year also included layoffs and position deletions. Over the past 5 years, fire districts have underestimated revenue an average of 25.86%. A more realistic revenue projection would make up far more than the 2.5 reduction with no impact to services. County administration is more than willing to assist in projecting more accurate figures. Fire districts spend less funds than they collect. Their fund balances are growing year over year. $8.9 million in excess has been collected over the last 2 years alone, whereas county general fund expenditures are growing at a faster pace than discretionary revenue. Even with the county reductions, we're still facing a significant deficit due to inflation, funding reductions, and other revenue coming in flat. Transient occupancy taxes are general fund discretionary dollars. This was outlined clearly in the ballot measure. Public safety is not limited to the sheriff's office and fire districts. Some examples of other public safety departments are probation, district attorney, animal services, and code compliance. Many county departments that are not designated as public safety play an important role in supporting public safety during critical emergency events. In conclusion, I genuinely hope that members of the public, our internal departments, and any external partners or observers can take a step back from the emotion that is understandably built up around this issue. When we look closely at the facts and evaluate the situation rationally, it becomes clear that the county is not dismissing or minimizing the critical role that fire districts play in our community. Their work is valued, respected, and essential. At the same time, spreading fear doesn't help the public, the districts, nor the county move forward constructively. We're navigating a very difficult financial period, and our responsibility is to balance limited resources without impacting public-facing services. This includes vital county public safety operations such as patrol, dispatch, the jail, probation, code compliance, and the DA's office, and many others that the community relies on day to day. The goal is not to undermine anyone's work. It's to maintain stability across the entire system. I ask that everyone reviewing the situation considers the full picture, relies on the facts, and helps us work towards solutions that can keep all essential services strong for the residents we collectively serve. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. I know it was lengthy, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
It was a lot, Denise.
Sorry.
I know. Don't ever be sorry about something like that.
Try to be as
I don't-
transparent as possible.
I believe you went as far as you could in that amount of time. So with that, I would like a couple of the fire chiefs that we had talked to come up and say your piece, please.
All right, Mike Johnson, Evans Pass Fire District. I just want to say I read through all 60 pages and I know how much work that is. And I got to imagine you did the heavy lifting on that. You did a great job presenting. My hat's off to you. You stood here and just delivered a ton of information. I know how exhausting that is. So,
Well, the hope is just to be transparent, right?
no, it is. And honestly, I think
The
you did a
county's
great
input
job
too.
capturing things. And just to clarify, I never had any intent to, have any discrepancy. Talking about the 85% reduction was about the monies that come from the county to the districts, not an 85% reduction in our total funding, right? So I didn't want to, and
Yeah.
please, by all means, hopefully at our last time up here, I wasn't trying to spread fear, right? It was just about the funding that we get from the county. And sorry, we've been having this one-on-one, but hello, everybody. Good morning still. How are you? 60 pages, ton of information. And I certainly had dialogue, like, the immediate thought is let's go tit for tat and we'll, I don't want to use the wrong term, but like debate it out, right? So certainly there are things in there that I love numbers just like you do. I think we have that common connection and I really appreciate that. I love digging in. I put in a request and I knew for a fact that being if it was a Public Records Request Act, Teresa, thank you for allowing the staff to give me some of that information. And there's just so many layers to the county, right? It's just so much of a bigger onion than the special districts or what I get to do as the fire chief and work with our board. Ours is much smaller. We're definitely different in scale. I do appreciate this report. It really does put into the public's eye what I think, and I understand we're talking about today, is the great work. It's a great report card for all the special districts and how well it's taken years and decades to create that financial portfolio we just looked at. I really do believe that. And I won't go belabor it too much other than I look at Ebbets Pass and, our reserve status, and just like so much of the monies that are, maybe I'm using the wrong term, but probably encumbered for certain funds or whatever, in the county that are outside of, the general fund or the 110, I think you said, or the 1010 and then the 1040, is it? Or the 10?
1040 is our capital, but
The
1010 and 1011 is
Right.
reserve.
So rather than going like, hey, look at this big old number I found in here. Can we do? I realize you're going, oh no, that's pieced out in certain ways. It's designated for certain things. And we're, even at Ebbets Pass, I'll speak to that because number one, it's where I work and I can off the top of my head. I know other districts have the same type of thing. We're receiving a fire engine. It has to be a 4-wheel drive type one, which I can't find used. is very expensive. It's $1.2 million. So even if my reserves look great at 1.7 or 7.1 million, like very, very soon that number is going to change, right? So even though it's like, wow, big numbers, personally, those are huge numbers. And then even at the district level, that's big. We're trying to do some other capital improvement, just like the building at the DA's office. When I heard 6 million to build that, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money, but we just got a similar type thing to try to expand or build a new fire station. And I'm embarrassed to even put the number out there because it is so much more than we have or probably ever will have. We're going to look at other options. So we feel the same struggles as the county. We feel the same difficulty. And I honestly, from me to all of you, I want the county's financial stability also, right? I want it all. I do. I definitely want to. I've said it too many times where I'm like, hey, I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be part of the draw or take away from the county. I want to see everybody flourish and have success. If there's any piece moving forward that we could be a part of that, of course, we want to continue to be a part of that. And this, in no way, shape, or form, I feel would be fair to the public or to the board to say fire districts are more important in any way, shape, or form than anything you talked about. You guys we're in it together. And I think the sheriff did a great job, right? And she's fantastic, not only as a sheriff, but an OES director. That was proof during this last fire. And the proof goes on and on and on, right? Sorry, I have to silence my phone and I can't multitask. So I used to be able to, but that's old. Oh, look, it's potential spam. Okay. I know it's tough. Anyway, I'm going to get to my point. I'll say a couple more things and I'll just put it to you this way. I get so fortunate to have CalPERS at Ebbets Pass. I'm fortunate to get healthcare. We do not have OPEB. We don't have benefits in retirement. I saw your OPEB slide. So we probably have some things that I would say are on par with the county's benefit plans. We don't maybe necessarily, there's probably some things that are a little better, maybe some things here and there, but I really do feel like when I say these things, I want to make that clear. And that's a blessing for me and my agency. And even then we struggle just like everywhere else to get more people in. We've been struggling to fill a vacancy for a firefighter. We feel like, hey, we're really doing good. I feel blessed personally, but overall it's hard to be competitive in this job market for these jobs. Now put that aside, and I want to tell you that the majority of the fire districts have zero retirement, zero healthcare, zero anything. And so when I say this, when I'm representing them, all that we've done and worked for and that we're building towards and we're trying to, I know the West Point chief sitting here, if my understanding is incorrect, he'll tell me I'm wrong, but they're trying for the first time to get some healthcare for some folks. First time ever. So this is a big deal. We are trying to get on the map to help our own employees and try to do some work. So I feel like there's some parity and then there's some real apples and oranges comparison as to what we do and how we run our organizations. So at the same time, I take a little bit of an emotional blow if I hear like, hey, look at the funds that the fire districts have. And I think about the backs of the firefighters that are doing the real work out there that don't even have a healthcare or even a plan for retirement. So my hat's off to all you gents, because those numbers, I know you made certain sacrifices to make that happen. And I want one day for that not to be the case. But other than that, in closing, I know that was really short, right? Unless you guys have questions for me, because Chief Herzog wants to talk. The proposal that was up there in the board packet, obviously, we are willing to we want to make a concession, and we've talked about that in the past and leading up to it. So it's not like we're coming empty-handed. And the proposal, or what we'd like the board to approve, and it's really up to the board, and we know full fact that the TOT money was always discretionary by the county. It was just what was spoken to in a media release back in 2018, and we've always received that 25% is spoken to. It's just what we all understood would be in perpetuity, right? And of course, we know about the CDF contract. Again, to reiterate, the resolution in 1999 when the districts and the county came together. And those are things in my mind that should continue in the perpetuity of our partnership with the county. Now, I understand there's financial challenges. We know that the Prop 172, we were thankful to get that back in, I think, 2017. And that 10% that we got, we were thankful, and times are rougher in 2017. And so the concession is take the 300,000 total, which is the 10%. Please, that's our concession. We'd like to say, hey, it looks like it's going to go to the district attorney's office or wherever the board decides it's going to go. That's great. We're not asking to retain those funds. So on September 8th, it would be to keep our TOT at 25% and then to continue to pay for the dispatch fee. But we also know at the end of that meeting, whatever your decision is at your discretion, right? So, but that was our ask. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Chief Herzog? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have papers that are going to be left up here, but.
Good morning, members of the Board of Supervisors. I didn't plan on speaking in open forum, so I had something that was to a 3-minute. So I apologize if I'm not facing you. I'm going to stick to this so I don't get off tangent. My name is Scott Herzog. I'm the fire chief at Calaveras Fire Protection District. I'm here to express my serious concerns regarding the reduction of TOT and Prop 172 funding for fire protection. As all of you know, the Gann fire devastated our county, especially my community. My heart goes out to everyone who lost their homes and property, and especially the family of the individual who lost their life. I was there from the beginning of the Gann fire. I attended daily briefings, EOC meetings, cooperators meetings, planning meetings, ops meetings. During the repopulation, I was out there in Circle 20, welcoming residents back, helping search through what was left of their homes, locating animals, providing information, providing lunches, food, water, Gatorade to residents, but most importantly, listening to their concerns. During this incident, I was informed because the fire reached our district, Copperopolis Fire Protection District, as well as Calaveras Consolidated Fire District, would be responsible for costs associated with protecting structures within our respective jurisdictions. This amount exceeds over $105,000. Instead of being reimbursed through our normal Cal OES process, I now have to seek reimbursement through federal and state programs. This process can take 2 to 3 years. Talking to the finance section chief, it's 2 to 3 years. And there's an important financial issue here that needs to be understood. Federal reimbursement may cover up to 75% of eligible costs, and then state reimbursement may cover up to 75% of the remaining 25%. This means our district will still be liable for a portion of the cost while waiting years for reimbursement. For a small rural fire district, this is a tremendous burden. I start my budget in the red every single year. Through reimbursements, through sending our engine and personnel to incidents throughout California, Nevada, and Oregon, I can potentially reduce that deficit and potentially go into the black. But let me be clear, we should not be balancing our budget on the backs of our firefighters. Our firefighters make minimum wage, less than a fast food worker. They make minimum wage. They leave their families, work long hours, and accept the risk of injury because they have a desire to help others. This is not a sustainable funding model. What is even more frustrating is that we were told we'd have a voice or a seat at the table when we met back in April. We were assured we'd be kept in the loop. When it came to making decisions, we told the county we were willing to ride out the highs and the lows together. We simply asked for communication and a heads up before major decisions were made. We sat back. We did not come to the meeting. Instead, we felt blindsided at an 80% reduction in TOT and 172 funding. We should be standing beside our residents today who lost everything in the Gann fire, not standing here fighting to protect funding necessary to provide them with emergency services. We are here when the county needs us. We provide mutual aid. We send our firefighters and equipment wherever they're needed. So I'm asking this board to reconsider these cuts. If difficult budget decisions have to be made, make them with us, not to us. Invite us to the table. Let us find solutions together. Copperopolis, as well as the rest of our fire districts, have always answered the call when the county needs us. We are asking you to stand with us in the same way we have stood with you in the previous years. Thank you.
All right. That was the two, right, Mike?
It is cheap, but it won't have a few items, if you would allow.
I'll entertain it, absolutely. Please,
Then we'll go.
no problem.
Mine was specifically some clarification on reimbursement, which would help out their hand.
Okay, yeah, we absolutely can do that, yes.
So Chief Herzog commented here about the boots on the ground. We have technology, we have equipment, but it's firefighters that put the fire out. And so the big focus of the Measure A fund was to put monies into the district to be able to pay people a livable wage and keep those folks here. We surveyed the districts. The average pay for a firefighter in Calaveras County is $19.27 an hour. The average pay for a pump operator is $20.25. And the average pay for a fire captain who's responsible for that entire crew is $21.50. All of those are below what the milkshake guy makes at McDonald's. He doesn't have the kind of responsibilities that our folks have. He doesn't have near the mandatory training that our folks have. And that's the other challenge that we have today. We don't have control over what the state and the feds have done to us when it comes to regulations, which should be firefighter safety, but still have an impact on us. Talk about the reductions in what we're each going to get with 172 and TOT. You give my district $14,000 as opposed to what I was hoping to get. That will buy 2 sets of protective clothing or 3 handheld radios. And that's all it will pay for in my operations. So you've heard that we've had some balances. We have been fiscally prudent. We went to the electorate. They approved that we needed money and they would pay for the people that we need to do the job, but that hasn't made us whole. And there's still a lot that still needs to be done. So thank you for your consideration, and I'll defer to Steve.
I appreciate you guys letting me address the board. So specific to CAL FIRE, we're actually neutral on the topic, but I just wanted to give some specifics when it comes to financial responsibility of the local fire district specific to wildland fires. So wildland fires specifically, obviously CAL FIRE is funded to protect the watershed, and we are here to protect the vegetation, all those things, and to try and stop the fire that way. But the structures that are within the local jurisdictions, it's actually their responsibility to do structure defense on those jurisdictions. So part of it could be, and I'll give you an example, maybe from Southern California. We've spent $1 million in one shift to do structure defense in certain jurisdictions, and they're responsible for that unless they have a Schedule A contract through CAL FIRE. So essentially that $1 million, depending on how they were ordered, that local fire chief does have the authority to order those resources. But if they do, that doesn't mean CAL FIRE is going to pay for that. That's also the same with our federal cooperators. When you go to a fire up in the national forest, essentially they're typically going to put that structure defense bucket on that local department. So, and one of the things to think of is everything's about reimbursement, right? So typically we reimburse these agencies through CFAA, and that's after 12 hours, they'll get paid back to point of dispatch. That's for doing state mission response. So that's things outside of their fire district or things that they're doing for CAL FIRE. But it's when it's within their fire district, they're jurisdictionally responsible, and they're also financially responsible. So typically what we do, obviously some of the smaller fire districts, the goal is never to bankrupt anybody. The goal is to work together as partners, daily partners we work with every day, is they show what their contribution is. So an example would be here on the GAN fire with Calaveras Consolidated and with Copper. They each showed a contribution to the incident where we didn't pay for their resources because they're jurisdictionally responsible for that portion. So if that gives some clarification on reimbursement, obviously the FMAG and the CDAA we already talked about are things that they can still get reimbursed after the fact, just like CAL FIRE is going to get reimbursed. FMAGs, everybody can qualify for an FMAG if it's part of the fire effort, and we can show that documentation with the exception of federal resources. So that's something that's going to come up there. And then the CDAA will do that 75% if a CDFA is awarded, for an extra 75% on top of that of the remaining expenditures. So hopefully that provided some clarification. I'll be available for questions as this goes on. Thank you.
Sheriff, is there something you would like to say?
Well, I don't know the process or what you guys want to know. Go push me up on noon.
I
I
would
feel
like
like
to
they're,
know what you know.
well, it's not just myself. I think there are other county departments that just want to be able to comment on the item.
All right, I
Proceed.
absolutely will hear each county department that wants to comment on the item, and I appreciate your time.
I mean, no one likes these discussions. No one likes having to talk about or review who's essential or who's not when it comes to protecting life and property. There's always going to be a high level of emotions, and that's totally understandable. I'd like to thank County Admin Denise. That was a great presentation, laying everything out. By the way, this Thursday, I have been 2 years as your sheriff officially. 2 years. Yeah. 2 years as your sheriff, 2 years as the undersheriff, and even back to the point when I was operations captain in 2022 is when the sheriff's office started making reductions and started having to take budget cuts. That's about 5 years, 4+ years that we have not seen a status quo budget where we have not taken cuts. And Denise, mentioned something, true reductions versus excess budget capacity. Some of those reductions we started taking was, slimming up our budget to actuals. It did have an effect on operations. It has had an effect on operations, but we have not seen growth. When Fire Chief Winhull was just talking about the wages and the salaries for firefighters, I mean, it's shocking sometimes when you hear it. And we went through that several years ago. We had to reevaluate the staff and the costs and look at what it's going to mean for the entire county with the increased budgeted employee cost. We did the class and comp study. We're trying to recruit and retain county workers, not just sheriff's office deputies, correctional officers, dispatchers, sheriff technicians, but the assessors, the district attorney, prosecutors, county council, just trying to get people working within the county. So we did the class and comp study. That meant more budget reductions. Over the past 4 years, we have actually eliminated, and I've gone over this every single year in June at the budget hearing, so I'm repeating myself to you guys. We eliminated sheriff's office positions. We cut 3 deputies, 4 correctional officers, 2 correctional technicians. And then this year we had to freeze another deputy position, and we had to up on the, for elimination was another sheriff's office technician. Those are cuts that we've already been taking. So when Denise says Denise and Teresa, when they're working with departments, that's a lot of behind the scenes back and forth. And we're not just going to sit back and say, we're here to do what you need to. We're actively engaged with what we can concede without greatly affecting our community as far as the amount of resources and services that we provide. As to the TOT reallocation, I do thank the board for what was reallocated to my office. The amount that we had to cut in our overtime budget that was reallocated, we spent in the last week.
Yeah.
So even without there, we would already be talking about contingencies. The biggest part of Denise's presentation too, when it talks to halting growth compared to cutting critical operations, we have been cutting critical operations, and we understand that this year is not a one-time discussion. Going into next year, it's going to be even worse. We have had a lot of salary savings because it's been hard filling positions. We still have open deputy sheriff positions. You often see us advertising when there's police academy graduations, but you don't always see when people fail out of the FTO program or leave our department to go to other departments, and we fill holes, and you would think we would be overstaffed by the amount of swearing in ceremonies that we have, but we're losing off the back end as well and constantly trying to keep up. So I just want to reemphasize that every county department, every department head meeting that I've attended, we've all been working really collaboratively. We understand the dire financial situation that the county's in. We'll be continuing to work on it, but it's across the board. Every agency has been cut.
Rochelle,
Yes, sir.
one other question. When it comes to reimbursement, you're in the same predicament as I mean, we are in the same predicament as the fire. So when you talk about the overtime that was spent, $199,000 is what you said earlier.
It's like 106.7 plus fuel cost, plus plus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did a total on everything there. But with that said, we're waiting on reimbursement in time. That would be a question as much for Teresa as you. And that we're in the same predicament as the fire districts when it comes to this, and it's money spent now. Hopefully, everything comes together properly so we can see a reimbursement later.
Yeah, and it will take time and there's no guarantee, and the recovery and financial recoup of the costs is going to be lengthy. We will never get 100% reimbursement. Some of the money spent, and we plan it when we create our overtime budget of what our needs are. You know, it is in there for dealing with a historical account of budget to actuals and dealing. And then we say in budget presentations that if there is a large incident, that it's going to deplete and we'll have to come back at mid-year and do adjustments and work with county admin. An incident such as this is, you know, so large scale that we won't be able to. But this was also a year where our overtime budget in the sheriff's office alone was cut by a couple $100,000. And so we just spent that in the last week. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for the answer. Is there something we would like to add to that, Teresa?
No, the sheriff's absolutely correct. We'll be in the same reimbursement situation as the fire department's talked about. There's a very lengthy documentation process required for reimbursements, and we'll go through that process. But I think we're getting reimbursed for incidents that happened 2 to 3 years ago. Right now, we're just now receiving reimbursements. So they are correct. It's a very lengthy process.
So this, Denise, this would add to the expenditure lines and the deficit, because we won't see that revenue until into the future, which may not even come to fruition.
So generally what the county's process is as soon as we get a state and federal declaration, we move all costs to a different org key to where we can book the revenue and expenditures. Last year, your board authorized us to put just under $1 million in an emergency disaster fund to cash flow this so that it wasn't a hit to the general fund. So our office will be working with the sheriff's office, EOC, in coming weeks to move all costs related to the Gann fire into a disaster sub-account, and we'll use that to cash flow.
Yeah, Captain Sturm and Sergeant Colwait in our OES division, really great with finances. We created a JL code immediately for this incident and started tracking it apart from normal day-to-day at the onset of it.
Excellent. Yeah, because that's when turning in the documentation and having it clear for FEMA and or Cal OES in this instance is crucial, because if we don't get that all documented properly, we won't see the funds at all.
Yeah, and every county employee knows, because they've seen an excess of emails from us as well as from the auditor's office on the tracking and the amount of 214 ICS activity logs that are being turned in and the timesheets. So thank you very much to everyone that's on our multi-agency county finance team specifically for emergencies like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's good. I mean, good answers, and this is crucial information to the overall cost for everyone in everything. Thank you. For further staff, would you like to speak? Miss Craddock or Chief Craddock?
Hi, I'm Kim Craddock. I'm the Chief Probation Officer for the county. I want to start off saying this very personally. I am a lifelong resident of Calaveras County. I grew up in Railroad Flat. I have lived through these fires for as long as I can remember. I feel horrible on a personal level about asking to take money from fire, but I did that this year. Probation is a law enforcement public safety agency most people don't know about. We work under the radar and try to be very quiet about what we do. We provide supervision to felony offenders who are not felony offenders, people who have been convicted of a felony who are not sentenced to jail or state prison. in the adult world. I won't go into the complexities of all of that. But we also supervise those being released from, a lot of people being released from state prison back into the community. We have a juvenile division who we work with at-risk youth and juveniles who have been found responsible for crimes and their families. In the past few years, pretrial services has come to the forefront in California and has been placed largely on probation's shoulders. These came out of two Supreme Court rulings, the Humphreys decision and the Kowalczyk decision, which basically says that every person who has been charged with a crime is entitled to be released on their own recognizance, or on bail that they can afford and is reasonable, no matter their charge, unless it's a capital offense. I've seen online where lots of people were upset with the sheriff's department when the person accused of setting the fire was released on bail, but that is a Supreme Court decision and totally out of the sheriff's department's hands. Probation has been tasked with supervising those individuals or monitoring those individuals who are released on pretrial services. We have supervised everyone from felony DUI deaths to rapists to your typical low-level petty theft on pretrial services. Currently, we have 161 people on pretrial services that we are monitoring. That is double what the jail can hold. This is the first time we have asked for county contribution for anything in probation in I don't know how many years. But if we lose this money, and we're strictly TOT, we were not getting any Prop 172 money, we will have to close down our pretrial services program and lay off a deputy probation officer. In the past, since the 23-24 fiscal year, we have eliminated 2 deputy probation officer positions, a clerical position, and this year we have eliminated an administrative assistant position, plus we have a probation tech and another probation officer position frozen. Probation has taken cuts from the county every year since fiscal year 21-22. Even with the money that we requested to keep the pretrial services program going, we will have a reduction in county contribution from what we had last year. I just wanted this board to know the consequences of not funding probation. These people will be getting out, whether they are monitored by probation or not. It is the Supreme Court ruling in these two decisions. And the courts, the sheriff, and nobody else has control or say over that. I know the DA's office tries to keep them in, but they have very little control as well based on these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Probation. Assessor Durham.
Good afternoon, board. Lori Durham, County Assessor. Great job, Denise, and County Admin. I too am a lifelong resident of the county, and as you can see, what our office does is produce an assessment roll that actually produces revenue for the county that goes to the general fund and to the districts as well. We were one of the departments that were saved by a position that was greatly needed. The previous year, fiscal year, we did have an appraiser position eliminated because of budget cuts. The GAN fire is going to impact our office as well. We have appraisers out there today assessing the damages to take value off the roll. So again, money coming off the roll due to fire. So us getting our backlog shored up and residents not have to go on a 4-pay plan. We discussed that in the other meeting, how that impacts the county as well, but also impacts our residents. It's very hard to have the property owners of a county come in the county and they can't pay a $5,000 tax bill because it's 2 or 3 years in the rears because it took us that long to assess them. It's not fair to them. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Ham, thank you. You've made phenomenal leaps in closing that role gap in the last so many years, ever since you've taken on the head there and with your successful election. And we have made cuts in the past so many years and everything. And you are a revenue. You bring home the bacon. And just, phenomenal work. We appreciate the work you and your employees do, and we continue to. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And, DA Yook. Thank you.
Rebuke, District Attorney. I'm so glad the assessor came up and spoke, because if I have to speak after Kim, I'm typically really pissed off because the Supreme Court decisions that are letting everybody out just makes my blood boil. So I just want to make a couple of points. First of all, with the Prop 172 assignment to the District Attorney's Office of that 10%, I want to make it clear that there was a swap out. So it wasn't this infusion of the 10% of 172 monies going to the District Attorney's Office. We had a reduction, a counterpoint reduction of our general fund monies with that $300,000. So it wasn't extra, it wasn't gravy. There was a swap out. So it's almost kind of an accounting thing, because the 172 monies can only go to public safety agencies. So the choice at that point was either the sheriff's office, probation, or my office. And once again, we did receive, an opposite reduction in general fund monies for that. With our budget, year after year, we've also been cut like other departments. This year was no exception. We lost a peace officer position that was unfunded by the board during the budget hearings. And as a reminder, at mid-year, we saw this coming, right? And we took a voluntary reduction. We took 2 positions in my office, consolidated down into 1 position, and then we were recruiting for that position, and that was pulled with the hiring freeze. And again, that is a peace officer position. Looking at where we were at mid-year, we are operating now with 3 positions cut. That's depending on how you look at the numbers, that's a good percentage of my staffing that has been cut. We are doing the best we can, of course. The other thing I want to point out is that as the general fund has shrunk and as the general fund has had issues over the years, many departments have been challenged to look at outside revenue sources besides the general fund. Now, my office cannot go out and make money. If we could, there'd probably be some easy ways to do that, but we obviously are not in that position. We're not a revenue generating department. We can't go out, and sell, get out of jail free cards or something like that. That's not something we can do. We cannot go out and generate revenue. But we can try to seek outside funding. At this point in time, I have about over 15% of my staff is funded by outside sources through partnerships and through grants. We like our victim services grant. So we have done our part, and I know a lot of other departments have had to do that. Look at their outside funding sources in order to support the general fund. I'm looking at all our friends with fire, and of course, and a natural disaster. That's a big equalizer, right? So you might think you have problems in your everyday life, but if something like that happens, a natural disaster, a fire, it's a great equalizer, and they are extremely important. And we do, of course, support our partners in fire. I would encourage the board, once the books are finally closed, a lot of times there is that extra revenue that we weren't counting on. I think all of our departments, including my own, were very responsible with the general fund monies that we are given every budget year. We recognize this is a big group effort, right? And we're all responsible for each other and to support each other and to use our tax dollars wisely. So it's my hope that there is some extra funding. My plan was to come back and ask for my peace officer position to see if there was some extra funding that we could fund that position. And I may still, depending on how the books close, but I would encourage the board that if the books do close and there is the extra funding, to consider funding against some of the fire departments if you can. Thank you.
Barbara.
Yes.
Thank you. And just to be clear, you did say it, but let's just stick with this budget right now. I mean, overall with mid-year and everything, you did lose, you had a consolidation.
Yes.
And then we had a freeze.
Yes.
And then we got to this. And so the swap out was to keep one of the positions. You still had a position cut at that time, right?
I had 2 positions cut.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we were
DEA
able to
investigate.
bring back one with the swap out.
The
So,
attorney, no, the
No.
attorney position.
Right,
was
the attorney
funded.
position.
The investigator position was not, and the investigator position was the
Right.
one where there was a consolidation of the two.
Thank you for clarifying. And then one other thing, when you are able to sell that get out of jail free card, please let me know. I'm asking for a friend. Right. Yeah.
First to know.
Oh, any further staff that would like to talk right now? Our beloved library.
Just want to say something quick. One of the things Denise said that kind of stuck with me was the emergency support that people don't think of. And the library is a leg in the chair, and it's one that people don't always consider up front. We are often asked to be cooling and heating centers. During emergencies like the fire, people come in to charge their phones. Their internet doesn't work. They come in to look at the internet and see if it's safe to go back home. When you talk about the minimum wage jobs and people going into those jobs, trying to apply for those jobs, they use our internet. They print their resumes on our computers. They look up community resources. Every time somebody has to fill out a form for building compliance, they come in and print it off on our computers and fill it out and fax and scan it and email it via the library infrastructure. When the library's closed more days, those services are open to the public less and less. There's also an aspect of crime prevention. Adults with low literacy skills are far more likely to be underemployed or unemployed and turn to criminal activity. Children of adults with low literacy are far more likely to not graduate high school and end up in the criminal justice system. So we are a silent support for the entire community on 100 different levels. We just lost a day a week at Murphy's and Arnold. Our current budget is more adequate to support 4 branches, not 7. We are supporting twice as many open hours than the state average per capita on half the amount of funding. We just lost our transportation officer. If that position is not funded in an extra higher capacity, because right now the position is still frozen, that means that if somebody in Moke Hill wants to check out a book where the only copy is located in Angels Camp, which happens quite frequently because we have a small collection, they will have to physically drive there themselves, because we will not have anybody to take books to the different branches. So all of these budget cuts do affect every single branch of the county, and some of the smaller departments support things that people are not taking into account.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sessions. Auditor Controller.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, board. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The first one being, thank you very much for approving my final budget movement that needs to happen to close the books. The timeframe for that will hopefully be able to close the fiscal year this week. I will send something out when we are able to do so. The other comment I wanted to make is I've been at the county for about 10 years. It was right after the Butte fire, but I've seen our not just response, but recovery from the winter storms, from the Arrow fire, from all these different things. And the OES team, Captain Sturm, Sergeant Waite, Lieutenant Waite, you know, the public communication, I was so impressed with their organization, their emphasis on, you know, getting everything done, but then also getting everything tracked. Like it was, I know there was some comment about, you know, is moving OES under the sheriff the right move? And if this is an indication, then I am very impressed. With the presentation, I always love Denise's attention to detail, the exactness with the numbers. Very much appreciate that. One of the comments that Chief Johnson said about a little bit of the apples and oranges comparison, I just wanted to make a brief comment on that, because we have a very good sense of what's in our coffers, what can be spent on what's restricted for what's been promised where. And so looking at our final numbers of truly discretionary money is something I would love to be able to see on your guys' side. If there's something where, you know, you're showing 9 million in reserves, but you've already promised 7 of it, that's information that would be, I think, important to look at before the hearing in September. So that's the last thing I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sessions. One quick question. If you don't mind.
I don't.
You brought up the leadership through OES and everything, and she brought up bringing up, I usually call it a org key, but it's, line items, anything. Already with the discussions, you feel fairly confident that we're doing a good job in documentation of everything so far?
I've been meeting with my staff that went and worked in the EOC and has been following up on, the timesheets, the claims, what information's needed for what. It's, as far as my experience here at the county, this will be our finest example to date of.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear, sir. Thank you. That's great work by everyone getting to that point. Thank you, admin. Thank you, Rochelle, your team. All right, any further? Ms. Whiting talked?
Whiting.
Did I say the wrong name? I apologize. It was on purpose. I'll have to use one of those get out of jail free cards sooner than later. With that, I think, board, is there any comments or anything before I go to public comment right now?
We take just a 5-minute break.
Yeah, we can take. Yeah. Yes. 5-minute break real quick. Yeah, no, there's a lot of information here. Okay, we're back to order. With this, I'm going to talk to admin and the board real quick. We're getting later in the day. We're going to finish this item. We're going to go through public comment, and then we're going to go through what the board has to say and finish this item, and then we'll take lunch. Everyone okay with that? Yes, very, very much so. I'm sure everyone's getting a little hungry, and our nerves get on edge. So with that, public comment, and we're limited to 3 minutes. It's on this item, and glad to hear and see so many people here that have a part in our process today. So thank you.
Okay, my name is Pat Gutman. I'm a McCallum Hill resident. And the last time you all met, you were pondering taking enormous funding away from the 9 district fire stations. I was too busy with the fire evacuation to have much to say about all the laws, all the numbers presented today. But I will say this, and it's with a little levity for this auspicious occasion, so bear with me. Bear Mountain burned last week. Cleanup and evacuations are being sorted out as we speak. Bear this in mind. There were bears on Bear Mountain. The bears were getting out of town fast with their cubs. They probably didn't want to go downhill, so they were probably going up the hill toward Moke Hill, West Point, as they are likely to run uphill anyway. Now, what would happen if the bears fled into the marijuana groves and the groves caught fire? With all that smoke, we'd probably have a bunch of stoned bears. Per NOAA, catastrophic firestorms are probably going to happen again soon, maybe tomorrow. So please fully fund the 9 district local fire district stations. And, what about unintended consequences or unintended liability costs? For the bears, of course. First responders are key to positive outcomes. And thank you for listening.
Sure.
Good morning or good afternoon. I want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. I know it's raw today. There's a lot of emotion going in here. I understand. I want to talk really more about some specific numbers. I had provided the supervisors with a quick PowerPoint presentation you guys have probably seen. So I'll just touch a couple points on it for you. I think we're all here for the same thing. We're trying to get this done. We hear it in here amongst all the different departments. I understand that. And that was a powerful PowerPoint presentation. If she ever needs a job somewhere, Warner Brothers would love her. Okay, I'm telling you, they love PowerPoint. Excellent job.
Don't sell her.
Okay, I won't. But I do think in a way it was eloquent in that what it points out is what's at risk, and fire protects all the revenue. That's the thing we kind of want to keep in mind, is that they are the one group that protects the revenue. It's the property taxes, it's the sale, the sales tax revenue as well. Those are what get hit when there's a fire, when tourism gets hit, when our forests and the reason people come up here. If they don't see that and that's lost, then we all sink further. If we look back at Butte, there's a case to be made that we still haven't recovered from that. So it's worthwhile to see it as an investment in ourselves. Another part of it is that we want to keep in mind the individuals in our community, because fire is also a critical part for homeowners and auto insurance. And the insurance companies look at the data, and if they see a shift in staffing is 50% of the weighted average of what they look at, then the insurance rates are going to go up. What else goes up is auto insurance rates. And you kind of wonder why. It's because when they see a reduction in staff, they know that this is the EMS out here and response times go down. So this is going to put a burden on the citizens as well, increased homeowners insurance and auto costs. So that hasn't really been factored in quite yet. And I'd like it to be part of your consideration into what we're looking at. Again, I understand that there are some tough choices that are being made here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to all sides on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Christopher Butner, publisher, CalaverasWatchdog.com. I am the son of a firefighter. Excuse the hat. I'm leaving it on as a tribute to these guys. What I heard in this presentation is a very strong justification for cutting the Calaveras Visitors Bureau TOT allocation to $0 in fiscal year 2026-27. This caught my attention. TOT revenues have remained relatively flat. The Calaveras Visitors Bureau is primarily responsible for generating and growing TOT revenue from tourism. The CVB's TOT reserve of over $518,000 per its last tax filing for fiscal year 24-25 must be spent down before any more funding is allocated to the CVB in fiscal year 27-28. Therefore, spend down the CVB surplus and reallocate the CVB's $350,000 for fiscal year 26-27, split 9 ways across the 9 fire districts at $38,000 each, which could pay to outfit 2 firefighters per district head to toe in state-of-the-art protective equipment, leaving over $8,000 in change per district. Let's review the CVB's TOT surplus history. Fiscal year 24-25, net assets or fund balances, $518,004. Fiscal year 23-24, $523,967. 22-23, net assets or fund balances, $637,814. Fiscal year 21-22, net assets or fund balances, $558,728. These excessive TOT reserves accumulated as the CVB continued receiving annual TOT allocations from Calaveras County and the City of Angels Camp. Our funds, the CVB has demonstratedly proven they're unable, incapable, or grossly unqualified to effectively invest in consistent tourism revenue growth. CEO Hitchcock, if you truly want to demonstrate fiscal responsibility today, you will commit to directing Martin Huberty, who is the D3 supervisor and executive director of the CVB, to reveal the CVB's year-end net assets or fund balances as of June 30th, 2026 by the next Board of Supervisors meeting. If those surplus TOT funds exceed $350,000, the CVB's TOT allocation for fiscal year 26-27 of $350,000 should be reallocated to the fire districts. The CVB's fiscal negligence by inexplicably hoarding such staggering large TOT surpluses is unacceptable and explains why TOT revenues have remained relatively flat. I think we can all agree austerity has never helped a sheriff or a firefighter save a life. My name's Christopher Butner, publisher of CalaverasWatchdog.com.
Neither have you.
Ms. Gonzalez, 3 times is a charm. Please,
Right? That was 2?
this is your 3rd time up
Okay.
at the mic today, so.
I would just like to say thank you guys for listening to all of us and listening to the strength of our firefighters and our captains and chiefs. We need this TOT to stay with them. We really do. She made it sound, and I'm outside looking in. I don't know nothing about nothing other than I'm a homeowner. She made it sound like these guys are rolling in dough, like every weekend they go have a great time and they got these unlimited budgets. They do not. They are out there 24/7 in the grime and in the grease, in the dirt and in the fires. I'm sorry, but they deserve that TOT. When the next time you guys hear about a fire somewhere, who's the first on scene? They are. This TOT comes from people that are coming into our county, right? They're people visiting us. First people, when they get a call from Lake Tulloch, guess what? They show up. When they get a fire at a house, they show up. Does anybody else show up? No. We want to hear about on the scanner. So these guys really, really deserve the TOT. As a taxpayer and as a person that supports my fire department, this really needs to be thought about hardly, because I didn't understand much of that. I'm not that sharp, but I can understand that it was looked negatively in that budget. And you know what? It's not negatively. These guys work very hard for every penny they get, and they deserve every cent of it.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Chief Young.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Don Young, Chief of San Andreas Fire Protection District. I have over 3 decades serving the community of San Andreas and Calaveras County. I'm very proud of that. The reluctance to it is that by doing so, I took a job that I received no benefits. I received no retirement. I received a salary. I worked 2 jobs, ladies and gentlemen. I worked 2 jobs in order to make ends meet, take care of my family. I don't want my firefighters to go through that. I'm not looking for a gift horse, but this was the 1 year that we were actually going to be able to offer benefits to the young men and women that work for the San Andreas Fire Protection District. We're not floating in money. Indicated this by this program that was presented here. I think it's tainted in my own opinion. I don't think it's just an accurate accountability of things and how things are and what our budgets are and what we have out expenditures. And it's unfortunate, and I don't blame her or the CAO. I blame the fact that there's just not enough openness about what the expenditures are. But as an example, engines, what they cost, what it costs to repair them. I'll eat that, but I can't when it comes to my personnel. I'm looking for some help. I don't want to take away from the sheriff's office or probation. They're wonderful people. I work hand in hand with the sheriff's office on 2 different, completely different job aspects, with both the coroner's office and with the fire district. And we have the greatest report in the last few years that we've ever had in decades. It used to be the cops had the guns, the firemen had the hoses. There was no interaction. There was no communication, none whatsoever. Those things have all changed dramatically, and we don't want it to go from that. We don't want to be played against those folks or the DA's office or anybody. We're not wanting to play us against them. But I do have concerns, and I know that my brothers sitting right here with me right now have the same feelings, that we are struggling, even with the Measure A monies. And I mean, that was the first thing that was brought up. I think it's unfortunate because it was a gift. Absolutely. It's helped us tremendously, but it didn't take care of everything. I know you have decisions to make, and I know they're all tough. We all do. I respect you, and I appreciate everything that you folks do. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith. Further public comment here? Online, Ms. Simpson.
Yes. Martha?
Oh, hi. So sorry if you hear the background news, the background noise. I just wanted to say again, how much I hope that you will support the fire chief's suggestions. I know that you probably won't be able to give them all the money that they have expected. But I do hope that you will figure out the best thing to do for them and support the firefighters. They all deserve benefits and new equipment. So that you will do your best to work with the budget. I also want to thank, I think it was Denise who put together that fabulous presentation, way over my head. It was really impressive. So thank you so much. And also, again, I spoke earlier about the library, so I hope that you will consider all the that they talked about and you could be able to continue to support our library and keep our library up and normal and in Murphy's open. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha. We have one more public comment. Michael?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Mike Rogers, Valley Springs. Full disclosure, I sit on the board with the Calaveras Consolidated Fire District, and I very much appreciate the presentation that was shared with the public. I do want to clarify a couple of things that were in the presentation. I'm kind of a facts and data guy. So when I came onto the board, we had a lot of challenges, and there was a slide that dealt with revenue streams for the fire districts, and I can tell you that the state firefighter reimbursement fund is a very volatile revenue stream. It can be as much as 40 or 50% of the revenues of some of these districts, and then the following year be less than 20%. It relies on fires all around the western part of the United States, and it's not a stable, reliable revenue stream. As for state and federal grants, I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room the situation our state and federal governments are in. That money, I've not seen it in my all the years I've been working with the board. I haven't seen a lot of grants come through. So that slide is a little questionable. So what Measure A did for us is give us stability. It gave these fire districts stability, financial stability, which they did not have. And it also gave us an opportunity to provide a decent package for these young firefighters. We have a very difficult retention problem with all the fire districts in the county because we traditionally are not competitive with the larger fire districts. I get it. It's part of the deal here, but we've made a very concentrated effort to try to improve that package. Our firefighters are very young on average compared to other districts. Our firefighters are out there. 75% of the calls they go on are not fire related. These are accidents. These young men and women are extracting people out of automobiles on Highway 26 and Highway 12 regularly. Some of them, our guys are 25 years old, and they need our support. And so as to Measure A, we took a very conservative approach to our budget because the county auditor gave us estimates initially, and we based our budget on those estimates. Those estimates came in below what ultimately the revenue stream turned out to be. We did not know clearly what that revenue stream would be. So we did the fiscally responsible thing, and we were very conservative with our budget. So the notion that we have this huge reserves or overage or whatever belies the facts. So I encourage you to be very careful in making this decision in terms of how you're supporting and what message that you're sending, not only to these firefighters, but the community.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate the comment. Ms. Simpson, is there further? One more.
We have no further online public comment.
All right, with that, I'll bring it back to the board. This is an informational item, so we aren't making a decision today, but we're hearing all sides as we move forward. Let's go ahead, if you're willing, we can move down from Martin, if you have any comments, and then Supervisor Andal, Supervisor Fullendorf, and Toffenelli, if you're all good with that.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you, Chair. We're 6 weeks away from the final. I would just want to reiterate what Supervisor Toffenelli always reminds us: until we know what we're getting from the state, all of this could change. I really wanted to thank Denise. Thank you very much for that presentation, and thank you, Chief Johnson and Chief Herzog, for speaking, and for the department heads that spoke as well, because I think, you do see the predicament that we're in and trying to figure this out. And like I said, we've got 6 weeks to figure it out. So I won't say more than that. I know you both have presentations to give, so I'll hand it over to Supervisor Andal.
Yes, I've been kind of taking notes as we go along. I think that what I hope that the community understands, what I really hope that all the chiefs understand, is that we value you. I think what is really unique is that within each of your communities, you are that trusted, steady, readily available group that is within those communities. And it goes beyond, your emergency response. I'll point out West Point in particular, it's at the far reach of the county, right? And oftentimes CAL FIRE could be gone on an incident. It would take a while for the sheriff to get up there, ambulance services to get up there. And that fire station is that place that people know they can go. And, we all recognize that and we value it. And we by no means want to, subject it to not providing that level of service. We also heard from county departments today. And we know that those are also important to residents. In addition to the calls, the emails, the messages we're getting about fire, we're getting messages about, the libraries that are cutting back and in West Point currently closed. We're getting calls about catching up those assessor rolls, people that are getting hit with these extraordinary bills and do not understand why. So it is important that she gets that caught up and we kind of stop that from happening and generates that revenue for us. People want deputies on the street more. People want the archives open. We're getting calls constantly. So it's like, where do we cut, folks? Like, where do we cut? I am optimistic as we move through the next couple months that we continue looking at the whole picture. We, recognize actual revenues and expenditures and keep looking for efficiencies and keep working together. But the glaring fact is that we need more revenue in our county. Across the county, across everything, we're not meeting our needs as far as expenditures. So that's something that I think we need to all look at. I think as supervisors, we are committed to that and having those conversations and working with the community, the departments, the districts, and being good stewards to the taxpayer dollars, because at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. So I appreciate all the collaboration today. I appreciate all the people in the room today and the emails we're getting and the ideas. Let's keep moving forward as a community towards that long-term financial stability.
I honestly just debated whether or not to say anything today because it's been an active last couple weeks. First, I want to thank admin office and Denise for all the work on this. I know you had limited time to put this together, and I really appreciate you bringing this in, not just in front of the board, but in front of the public for transparency. When I first started on this board, the county was in a $9 million deficit. In this last, 6 years, we've strategically made hard decisions to reduce that deficit to what we see today. We still have work to do, but this is not sustainable. We need to continue to evaluate our revenue as our costs continue to go up with inflation, state mandates, and et cetera. Department heads have explained those examples. None of us likes government until they need something from them. That want is straining our general fund, and we're now seeing the consequences, such as library closures, county archive closures, limiting staff and community engagement, eliminating funding to community activities, and et cetera. County has been proactive in making decisions to support emergency county services. Those examples were mentioned earlier by Denise and Supervisor Stopper, such as the emergency funds. And it's not just for fire. We recently had the winter storms, so that fund is to circulate many emergency responses. And it's imperative to plan that. Putting the funds in the OES to work on fire mitigation, such as field breaks and evacuation routes, are also the responsibility that we need to take into consideration. County has been wise to make those forecasts. Denise mentioned that each district is run by a board. Like us here, we have to make those hard decisions. We have no jurisdiction over the outcomes. However, I implore the public to participate in those local fire district board meetings and their budget planning. Fire is personal to me. I've worked with Fire Safe Council. I've worked in helping with field breaks. I have my own personal qualifications, and I've seen some of you even out on the line. I value each and every one of you and the job that you do. But now we need to make a decision, and I hope that as we move forward over the next 6 weeks, that we can continue to have these open conversations that are honest, transparent, and we understand where we need to go. I've been elected to sit on this board with my colleagues to make sure, as we said in the last meeting, no stone is left unturned. And as we walk through this, I hope to see in the future that the board discuss more revenue so we can continue to provide the services that the community expects of us, including one of those being the library. I thank public safety for their work. Again, the districts are valued. Some of you, I've grown up with you, and some of you have watched me grown up. And I hope that we can continue to work together. I respect each and every one of you. And I look forward to the board budget presentation in September. And I hope everyone in this room and those listening online will continue to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Well said. Mr. Toffenelli.
Yeah, I have a lot to say, but it's difficult not knowing what's going to happen until we get to the final budget. As I brought up before, this is a preliminary budget, and I'm looking with staff to find avenues to get some money to you. It's not like we're all just push. Well, that's it. That's not the case. As a matter of fact, I've asked Denise about, and Greg had brought up that we haven't closed. We just closed the books this week. I don't know if we have collected more TOT tax than we had projected during last year. That's one revenue source that maybe we can use if we're over the TOT tax or projected, whatever that amount is, of giving that back to you guys. Whether it's 100,000 or whatever it is, to get back to where you guys need to be. Believe me, I'm with you. Most of you have known me for all the years I've been on this board, and I led the charge in 2018. Chief Dickinson just came on and led the charge to get the TOT to you guys because you were drastically underfunded. So I led that charge and got the board to agree to give you the 25%. And it's very difficult knowing that this is happening the way it is. But every department in the county right now is taking drastic budget cuts, just not this year, over a period of years they have. And I live in the county, like was said, I live in a rural part of the county. I live on my subdivision is all 5 acres or more. And so, and a lot of the people don't keep up with trying to be fire safe, and they get written up by CAL FIRE, for not doing it. Every year I mow a great amount of my, property, but that doesn't mean it's going to save it. You don't know because your next door neighbors or whatever. It's very difficult to see, but I'm 100% behind you guys, 100%. And I understand what you're saying about employees, trying to retain employees when they can get experience and then go to Stockton or wherever where they're getting benefits and they're getting a good wage and trying to retain them here. It's a very difficult situation, and I'm with you guys. And I will do everything I can between now and September, which I've already tried to work with staff on, to get some funding, find whatever funding we can get to add to your funding that we have reduced. So we'll see when it comes to the final budget in September. Again, though, you don't know what the state is going to do. Last I heard, they had over $350 million deficit or $1 billion deficit. And what they usually do and have in the past, the years I've been on here, like I said earlier, they take it from the counties and just tell the counties deal with it. So that's something that we need to keep a close eye on. Hopefully they don't do that. And hopefully we have some additional funding coming forward, because I will be pushing for you guys to get that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli. A lot's been said, and I think everyone in the room really has the picture is, the pie's only so big and there's so much apple pie to go around. And it isn't necessarily sweet right now when it comes to the size of our pieces. The TOT, Mr. Toffenelli, I was here on the other side of the dais when they put that through. It was the same year I got elected in, and then I followed up and I was in my seat the following year. Mr. Toffenelli did lead the charge on making that general fund contribution the way it was, and with all intent. But when they were putting it before everyone, I was like, well, why don't you go to if you would have made that specific, you would have had to have a super majority on the election to make that specific in those signs. So it's a general fund item and I do believe the intent of Toffenelli when he first put it there, that we would keep it that way as long as it was beneficial to the county as a whole. And I've been one to stand by that even through last year. And a majority of you chiefs were here when I said it. I said it at that time, and it's not to pit one against the other. It's like there are so many essential services that are losing out right now. And they're all important, every one of you. And the decision's not easy moving forward. Ms. Fullendorf brought up a $9 million structural deficit when she first came in. That first year I was in, that when we approved in June, the first step of the process, and gone in December, that was originally looking like $13 to $19 million structural deficit. And I want to say something here that, like, through all this hardship, and no matter what you feel transparency is this board has worked consistently to reduce that every year, closing gaps, closing carryovers in different departments, which actually in a way has kind of brought us to this point today, because it's actually a lot of that $13 to $19 million structural deficit before was like buried in surplus that was carrying over in counties back in the past. Now it's actually more transparent that you can see it. It's not like it is what it is. And that's where the hard line's getting to is like we can't dip into those funds because we made them all substantial and putting our entire budget together. We're not in a good position as a county financially, but because we've been doing this so many years, talking with other counties and working through CSAC, we're in a better position than a lot of other rural counties right now because they have not been proactive. They've been continuing moving down the course that they have been in years, hoping that something with the economy would get better. We've had ups and downs with the economy. Right now, we're on the brink of something that, could hurt us more, where it won't be anything like 2006, 7, 8 with the housing crisis like before. But when the assessor comes up and she says she's catching up on the roll, which in 2019, 2020, I had people calling me from all of Orchard Estates that all of a sudden they were having to pay 4 years past on those beautiful homes. And they had renovated those houses and because they were paying on bare land because the rolls hadn't been caught up. And all of a sudden they received a bill for 4 years on all the difference for houses that amounted to $1 million because they put in a pool, they put in an accessory dwelling with a garage underneath. I mean, it's almost unfair for me to see a bill like that. I can't even imagine getting a $25,000 bill all at once and say, hey, you have to pay it within 90 days. You can put in, and you have to pay it, and you can put in something with the assessor to have a hearing to contest it, but in the end, you really own it. So you're going through a process that's hard. She's caught up the rolls, but these rolls could go into a decline in value. And in that sense, she just talked about it a little bit when it comes to the loss of value on those places that burned. And that would be a reduction to our income, our revenue. And if the housing market even goes down a little bit, there's going to be a decline in value, which hits our total in the end. We've taken so much from our departments that there isn't much more to take. There's not much more meat on the carcass to take without completely losing services in other areas. This is the first year we're looking at you. I would hope that things are different moving forward. I hope that we can actually get some water out of some rocks here shortly, because that's what we're looking at right now. And hopefully it isn't to the detriment of any economy in the future that puts them out of business. But I'm willing to look at those things, and we'll have a decision for you in December. I hope things are better, but I'm planning for the worst. And it's not personal. This is the first year we've done it for the fire departments so far. 4 years prior, we did it to every department in the county, and there are departments responsible for them. You are valued, and so is everyone else. That's where I stand on it. Is there any further comments by the board?
I would just like to say for myself, this isn't a permanent. It doesn't mean every year we're going to take money or cut you out completely with TOT. It's a situation that we're trying to budget and balance our budget right now. And we've taken money, like you said, from the departments every year. So, again, to me, I can't speak for the other board members. I'm not looking at this as a permanent situation. Things get better, then we can go forward. I'm not even sure that it would be the same next year. It might be more that you guys get next year, or even full 25%. It just depends on where we're at and what we're looking at. And again, I'm willing to help any way I can to find some money this year for you when we get to that final budget. So.
Thank you, Mr. Toffanelli. Is there anything else any other staff would like to say? Teresa, anybody with that? No.
I would like to say that I appreciate everyone's efforts in this, trying to figure out how to balance the budget and provide public services across the board and public protection. It has been a very challenging year. We understand that it's a little disheartening for folks out there to take these reductions in funding, but the reality is that the money's simply not there and we can't just print it. We don't have that capability. So the board's been very good about really looking for new funding sources. We're going to be looking at some other things as we move forward. And all I can say is that we're hopeful that we turn a corner in our future budgets and are able to provide funding not only for the fire departments, but our own departments who are really struggling right now with trying to retain employees as well. Library is a perfect example. Most of her employees are less than full-time. They're non-benefited as well. They don't get benefits because their hours are so low. So it's not an us versus them thing. It really is about trying to create a system that serves the public with the resources that we have.
Thank you. With that, I think we're done for lunch. I appreciate everyone's time here and everything. It was a good, solid conversation. I felt like it was positively received, even though it's a negative issue. So with that, lunch.
Chair, when would you like us to return? 1:40.
2 o'clock, 45 minutes, half hour lunch.
Yeah, I think 2 o'clock's fair.
Okay.
That'll give everybody plenty of time to get to it, and I'm sure some people are coming back for some of the other issues as they stood up for the yeah.
Yes, okay. 2 o'clock.
Thank you.